short story inspired by the Netflix Black Mirror series and the American novelist Dean Koontz by J. Wilson.
Part 1. The Test. Diane loves Matt, or so it says on the card. Matt and Diane were married for about a year when they moved into their first house, a rural and rambling single level just outside of Portland. It was a house they could afford, and it needed a lot of work. But they were dinks and in their prime, so that shouldn't have been a problem. Diane was employed by Prometheus Computer in Hillsborough as an inside sales associate, and Matt was a self-employed engineering consultant, primarily serving the high-tech industry in and around Portland. Both had migrated from California, where they found it too expensive and too crowded. Diane grew up in San Francisco and had been raised by her uncle after her parents had mysteriously disappeared when she was 3. To this day, no one had determined the reason or cause for their disappearance, one of the many unsolved mysteries that happen every year. Matt was in his early 40s and had been divorced several years before he met Diane. He had also lived in the Bay Area and worked for several of the tech companies in Silicon Valley. He was glad to be out of the stress of daily competition and felt secure doing something he enjoyed and at his own pace. Some might call him a nerd because he was always fussing with his electronic gadgets, even at the expense of billable hours. But that's one of the perks when you get to work for me, as he often reminded himself. It was a warm and sunny autumn afternoon when Diane left work for the 45-minute drive home. It was her birthday, and the sales staff at Prometheus had put on their obligatory birthday cake and beer party, a ritual exceeded only by the numerous and rowdy going-away parties. They were, for the most part, a congenial group, but there was a subtle undercurrent of backbiting, something not uncommon for a competitive group in a competitive industry. The 10-person group had pitched in and bought her a birthday present. As she began to open it, she prepared for the worst. Most presents in the past had been gag gifts, a kind of celebratory roast of the recipient, but this was an ancestry DNA test kit. At first she was a bit offended, thinking about her parents' strange disappearance, but her ethnicity was not in question, at least not because of that. Besides, she didn't think anyone in her group even knew about it. It was just something that she never talked about to anyone. Hey, thanks. Nevertheless, she was curious to see just what her family history was, who they were, and where they came from. Matt was intrigued too, partly because, for him, her background had a big hole in it. He had never met any of her close relatives. Her uncle had died before they met, and most of her extended family was scattershot all over the globe. The results promised to also match DNA to other relatives who had also taken the test. Cool, let's see what happens. Hope none of your blood relatives are from Transylvania, said Matt with a wry smile. 6 weeks later, the DNA results arrived as an email with a link to the data in an encrypted web page. Diane was still at work, but Matt's curiosity got the better of him, so he set up a password and logged in. He scrolled through the endless boilerplate, explanations, limits of liability, indemnification, etc., down to the results. The pie chart showed a rather unsurprising breakout of 46% Northwest European, 27% Balkan, 15% Southeast Asian, 9% Nigerian, and even showed 2.2% Neanderthal. There was also 0.5% labeled as unknown. When Diane came home, Matt showed her the webpage of results and kidded her about her Neanderthal lineage. That explains why you seduced me, you just didn't have a club. So what's this unknown mean? Shouldn't that be other? Or maybe that's your weird uncle part. Oh well, you get what you pay for. Several days later, Matt was doing some of his consulting work on his computer, took a break and brought up the DNA page again and just stared at it, thinking. After scrolling around a bit, he found the Contact Us number. After waiting like forever on hold, enduring looping repetitions of, listen carefully for our menu has changed, and your call is important to us, mashed up with shit music played through a tin horn, he was just about to pull the plug when he heard, technical support, may I help you? So, what does unknown mean? Do you mean other? No, it says unknown. There's no such category. Anything under 2% is labeled other. Well, that's not what it says. Matt, this process is totally automatic. After it's submitted to the queue, no human even sees it. Maybe it's a computer error. I can take a look at it for you. I'll need your password. Let me call you back tomorrow after I know more. Matt, I apologize for the error. We would like to run the test again, on us. I'll even expedite it through myself. I'd like to debug whatever the hell this is. Hello, Matt? The second test came back with the same result. With your permission, I'd like to escalate this and run a high-resolution algorithm on our cloud mainframe. It's still in beta, but the analysis slices and dices the DNA to a sub 0.2%. 2 weeks later. Hello, Matt. I'm going to call you back on a secure line, okay? We got the results and double-checked them with our senior technical staff, but we don't know quite what to make of it. We've never seen this classification. So what the hell is it? There's a 0.1% mix of Eastern ethnicities, but 0.4% is designated not human. How can that be? We're still working on it, but we don't think it's an error. Honestly, we've never seen this before. Might be a recessive proto-human gene that somehow survived as a genetic memory, as in lower life forms. I am told that this sometimes but very rarely shows up in congenital chimerism, which is a genetic merging of two non-identical twins, where only one survives but remnants of the other can remain in the body cavity. Or it might be something else altogether. We really don't know. I don't want to alarm you, but to put this to bed, you should consider having Diane do a full-body MRI. If it's negative, I wouldn't worry about it. What if it's positive? Let's worry about that if it happens. Have you noticed any behavioral changes in Diane? No, why? Nothing, just... Does Diane know that you've been working on this? No, this is something I've been doing on my own. I didn't want to bother her with it. But now... Yeah, I know. Let me think about it and do some research on my own.
Background. A chimera is essentially a single organism made up of cells from two or more individuals. That is, it contains two sets of DNA, with the code to make two separate organisms. One way that chimeras can happen naturally in humans is that a fetus can absorb its twin. This can occur with fraternal twins if one embryo dies very early in pregnancy, and some of its cells are absorbed by the other twin. The remaining fetus will have two sets of cells, its own original set, plus the one from its twin. An Indian teenager with chronic stomach pains was told they were caused by the malformed fetus of his twin. The parasite had been feeding off Narendra, 18, after forming an umbilical cord-like structure that leached its twin's blood supply, a rare condition with only 200 cases ever reported worldwide.
Diane, we need to talk. About what? I've been researching the unknown part of your DNA analysis, and, well, I think we need to check it out, just to be sure. Be sure about what? Just to see if there's nothing abnormal? What the hell are you talking about? The following Wednesday, Mark and Diane were able to get in to see their primary care provider, Dr. Murray. So what's this emergency all about? First, let's see if your insurance will pay for this. It's a very expensive test, and we don't care about the cost. We just need to find out what it is. Okay then, I'll request priority scheduling and let you know. Mark, this is Dr. Murray. I have the results. I'd like to have you and Diane come in so we can talk. Can't you tell me over the phone? It's a bit complicated. I can see you tomorrow at 10 hours if that works for you. First of all, let me just say that this is preliminary. We're checking with our network associates to correlate the findings. It's a bit unusual, so we're taking all precautions, you know? Okay, so let me just say, it looks like you have two sets of DNA. One is Homo sapiens, that is you, and the other is what was referred to in your family DNA test as unknown. Our analysis seems to confirm the original test as, well, the so-called 0.4% as non-human. Is this the chimera thing? Hold on, let's look at the MRI images. These are sequential section views from the feet up to the head in half-inch increments. Let me scroll down. See that part in Diane's abdomen? That's a small mass that should not be there. It might be the remains of a chimera twin, Or it might be something else altogether. There's also something else you should know. What looks like smaller but identical duplicate of this appears in Diane's brain. Tell me, Diane, have you noticed any strange feelings or emotions lately? Yes, I'm getting totally freaked out by all this shit. Why can't you just tell me what's going on? Yeah, Doc, what is it? The high-field MRI can still only tell us so much with this kind of thing. I would recommend we do an exploratory needle biopsy on the masses. That's the only way to be sure. Be sure of what? It's either benign or that it's something else. Like what? That's what we need to find out. 2 weeks later, and still awaiting the lab results, Matt and Diane are in bed. It's 1:00 a.m. Diane is asleep, but Matt is still tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Instinctively, he reaches out and draws Diane closer to him. Slowly, he becomes aroused and begins to gently penetrate her. Even as his motions become more and more violent, she remains passively asleep. Then just at the moment of climax, he feels something sharp. He tries to pull out, but can't. Jesus, there's something inside. The searing pain is incredibly intense, grabbing into him like serial rows of shark teeth. Matt bolts upright, hyperventilating, his eyes wide open, his body glistening with cold sweat. He looks down at himself and then looks over at Diane, sleeping peacefully. Matt and Diane, thank you for coming in on such short notice. I know you're really stressed over this, so let me tell you what we've been doing. We sent the biopsy specimens to several world-class university research labs. Only one came back with a result with more than a 50% confidence level, but I have to tell you the others had some differing opinions. So just so you know, let me again preface this with, we have no consensus. But here's the ranked order of the results. Stanford, unidentifiable abnormal cells. Cornell, possible proto-human chimera hybrid. University of Florida, perceptible genetic traces of the order. Aranea, class Arachnida. What the fuck? Also, there is evidence that this is growing. The mass is growing a bit. Actually, even the biopsy showed some evidence of cell division. It's really extraordinary. No shit. Mark, have you noticed anything different in Diane over the past few months? Well, I don't know. I mean, sure. This is driving both of us nuts. No, I mean specifically about things like her diet, her sleeping habits, what the hell is this Aranea thing? What is it? It's characteristic of spiders or anything with 8 legs, actually. But you know, what? I think we need another opinion, man. Look, we're pretty much in uncharted territory, I have to tell you. But trust us on this. I'm going to prescribe some sedatives for both of you to ease your stress while we conduct some more research. Also, be sure to call me if either of you notice anything at all that is, different. Okay? Hang tight, we'll figure this out. Mark, what the hell is going on? Jesus, I'm scared. Diane, it's going to be all right. We have the best medical people in the country working on this. You mean the best entomologists? Good to see you still have your sense of humor. Diane, you know your past is a mystery. What do you know about your uncle, the guy who raised you since you were 3? I think he was employed by some kind of biologics company, something to do with the government during the Cold War. He never really talked about it, and I was too young to care. And your parents, I really don't know. They were never found. They did find their car, though. Some homeless guy was arrested while driving it in Bakersfield, but he was never suspected of anything other than grand theft auto. He claimed that he just came upon the car, apparently abandoned on a country road, with the keys still in it. His story was never disproved, so who knows? Matt and Diane struggled just to get through each day, waiting for the next shoe to drop. Neither told anyone about anything. It was just too damn creepy. Diane buried herself in her work, but Matt continued to conduct his own research on the internet, which was probably the worst thing he could have done. Between the genetic anomalies, alien hybrid babies, and whack job conspiracy theories, he would end up self-medicating each night and reliving the same nightmares over and over to the point he was even afraid to sleep. Then it got worse. Ever since Dr. Mitchell asked if he had noticed anything different, Matt had been furtively watching Diane when she was unaware of his presence. He scrutinized every subtle mannerism and appearance change as potentially suspect. He became so paranoid, and it was dragging their marriage into some dark times. He never mentioned anything to her directly, but Diane could sense him looking at her, as if she had eyes in the back of her head. But this night, Matt came to bed late, as usual. He easily slipped into bed, being careful not to awake Diane. But just as he got in bed, he glanced down. The lights were off, but the moonlight was enough to dimly light the room. Then he saw it. Each one of her toes was moving, not together, like something normal, but independently, like some goddamn puppet. "Hello, Diane. This is Dr. Mitchell. Hope you're holding up. We'd like you and Matt to come in for a teleconference with some experts in New York. We were able to buy some time with Watson, the AI supercomputer. Specifically, the subgroup is dedicated to cryptogenetic medical research. The people there were very intrigued with your issue and thought if there was an answer, Watson could solve it. We gave the programmers everything we had and let Watson do its recursive self-learning thing for several days. Of course, there are safeguards with this technology, and it has to be walled off from the internet, so it doesn't escape into the wild. Anyway, they said it should be complete by Wednesday morning, so we can all see what they have at the same time, okay?" Jesus, Diane, didn't they even tell you anything? What is this, a fucking surprise party? Okay, sorry, I didn't mean that. Whatever it is, we'll deal with it. You know I'm with you all the way on this, right, babe? Hello, Matt and Diane. This is John Kyle calling from New York. I'm the head of genomic research here at IBM. How are you today? I'm, shaking. Understood. Okay then, let's get to it. I have to tell you, the data we fed to Watson was very unusual, very challenging. It actually crashed one bank of servers, something our team has never seen before. So we lost a day of work, but recovered most of it. The bottom line is, what you have is basically a variant of what we call autosomal recessive genetic disorder. We know about your parents and your uncle. We know that he was employed at a secret military think tank doing genetics research. He's a pretty famous guy in a very esoteric field. From what we could find out, and most of it is still classified, they were doing some experiments on people who were thought to be dead. But our team is reasonably confident that whatever your uncle was doing has nothing to do with your DNA. But anyway, when we say it's a dark strain, we mean it's not classified, it's not actually known. No one has ever seen this, so we can't say if it's even a problem, given that you're still asymptomatic. And since you've lived with this since you were born, I think you'll be fine. But just to be on the safe side, we would like to monitor you, at first on a weekly basis, just so we can track any micro fluctuations in your genome. I promise you it won't hurt. Matt and Diane left the meeting feeling relieved, at least on the surface. Now they could return to more or less normal life. Diane could return to work full-time and make up some story to cover for her sporadic absences. The diagnostic monitoring that Watson was to conduct was to be done using an electronic patch adhered to her lower back. Each week, she would remove it and send it to the lab using a special package with all kinds of warning labels on it. A new one would be sent to her the same day. It all seemed harmless, but still a little creepy. That night, they both went to bed early and actually slept through the night. Matt noticed a faint glow from the patch, but still visible through the sheets. I guess that means it's working, he thought. The next morning, Matt got up early and went down to fix them both breakfast, something he hadn't done in quite a while. Diane came down, already dressed for work, wearing an outfit that Matt didn't think he had seen before. It was a herringbone taupe jacket over a white silk blouse and black pants. For some reason, she had the patch in her hand, and she looked a bit off too, Matt thought, then thought again. Just shut up, Matt. He had warmed up some fresh bakery cinnamon rolls, brewed a pot of Sumatran coffee, and poured it into some ceramic mugs he had gotten Diane for her last birthday. Diane quietly walked into the kitchen. A faint smell of musk wafted in behind her. Outside, the morning northwest fog was starting to move in, and the wind picked up. The room darkened as the sun was overtaken, making what was already a cold kitchen feel even colder. She sat down and slowly turned to look at him, unblinking. What was it? You okay? He asked. Then he noticed. It was her fingers. As Diane grasped the cup, her fingers, now unmistakably elongated, wrapping slowly around the cylindrical cup as if it was some kind of hapless prey. Her eyes glazed over and narrowed as she locked focus onto Matt's face. There was a loud crack as the cup shattered to pieces, followed by a demented hissing sound. Immediately, Matt woke up, gasping for air, his heart racing, his eyes blinking rapidly. As he slowly regained consciousness, he realized it was just another goddamn nightmare. He calmed down and looked around the room and sighed. Really? The warm morning sun was pouring in through the clear story windows, while the leafy shadows from the maple trees danced across the pitched ceiling, making the room look kind of alive. Diane was just waking up, stretching her arms. He looked down at her as she slowly opened her eyes, and his heart stopped, cold. Diane, oh my God, your eyes. Yeah, ain't it cool? As he felt her fingers rip into his upper thigh. Part 2, The Flip. 3 weeks later. Oregon State Hospital, Psychiatric Ward, Salem, OR. Diane, good to see you again. How was the drive from Portland? A lot of fog and drizzle as usual, so I took the back roads. How's Matt doing? We're still collating the test, but we have learned a few things. We've redefined his case as what we call stage 4 epistemic crisis. It's analogous to an autoimmune disease where your immune system attacks its own body. But in Matt's case, his own brain is fighting itself, resulting in the complete loss of his cognitive ability to distinguish reality, as you and I know it, from the bizarre, endless loop of nightmares, as you describe them. He's on an anxiolytic sedative right now, but as you can see here, his EEG shows unusually active beta waves, what would normally indicate a waking state. That probably explains the twitching. What's actually going on inside his head right now is anybody's guess. So his complete loss of reality, coupled with his hyper-lucid nightmares, triggered and then exacerbated the episodic self-mutilation. You brought him in none too early, that I can tell you. Diane left the hospital as what was left of the day's misty light was fading quickly, bringing with it a definite chill in the air. She got into her car, pulled down the visor and opened the flap. She took off her dark glasses and looked into the lighted mirror. An ever so faint smile crossed her face as she noticed the white sclera of her eyes was getting much, much darker now.
Now, soon, very soon, she would be able to join the growing numbers of underground Chimera arachnida and join up with the cabal of reptilians, reptoids, archons, saurians, Satanists, draconians, reptilian humanoids, cannibalistic child molesters, and George Soros to defeat the likes of Donald Trump and his lickspittle toady, J.V. Vance.